For years, neighbor Karen had been the bane of Jessica's existence, obsessed with controlling every aspect of their HOA community. But when Karen's vendetta against Jessica's lights crossed the line, Jessica knew she had to take drastic action to put an end to the war once and for all. Jessica stared grimly at the shattered remains of her outdoor lights. The fourth time this month, Karen had managed to destroy them. The woman was relentless, her petty tyranny over the neighborhood's aesthetic standards wearing Jessica down. "That's it," Jessica muttered, her hands shaking with fury. "I'm done playing by her rules." Storming into the house, she yanked open the drawer where she kept her toolbox, already formulating a plan. If Karen wanted a war, she was about to get one. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jessica stepped outside to admire her handiwork. The new lights she had installed were sleek, modern, and shatterproof, built to withstand even the most determined assaults. "Let's see you try and break these, Karen," Jessica whispered, a grim smile playing on her lips. The next morning, the sound of a car screeching to a halt outside Jessica's house jolted her awake. Peeking through the curtains, she watched as Karen stormed up the driveway, her face contorted with rage. "Jessica." Karen's shrill voice pierced the air. "What is the meaning of this?" Jessica opened the door, schooling her features into an expression of feigned innocence. "Why, Karen, whatever do you mean?" "These lights." Karen gestured wildly at the offending fixtures. "They're hideous. They don't match the rest of the neighborhood at all. You need to take them down immediately." "I'm afraid I can't do that, Karen," Jessica said, crossing her arms. "These lights are completely within HOA regulations, and they're staying put." Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. "We'll see about that." She spun on her heel and marched back to her car, leaving Jessica to wonder what fresh hell was about to unfold. Over the next few days, Jessica watched as Karen escalated her campaign, trying every tactic she could think of to force Jessica to remove the lights. She filed formal complaints with the HOA, threatened legal action, and even tried to organize a neighborhood petition. But Jessica remained steadfast, determined not to back down. She knew that Karen's obsession with control and conformity was the root of the problem, and she wasn't about to let the woman's petty tyranny win. As the tension in the neighborhood reached a fever pitch, Jessica couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She had finally found a way to stand up to Karen, and she wasn't about to let her win. "Bring it on, Karen," Jessica muttered, her eyes hardening with resolve. "This is war." The tension in the neighborhood was palpable as Karen ramped up her crusade against Jessica's lights. She spent hours on the phone with the HOA board, demanding that they force Jessica to remove the offending fixtures. "They're an eyesore," Karen ranted. "They stick out like a sore thumb and ruin the aesthetic of the entire community. Something must be done." The HOA president, a soft-spoken man named Mr. Henderson, tried in vain to reason with Karen. "I understand your concerns, Karen, but the lights do comply with our regulations. Unless we can prove they're a safety hazard or violate any specific rules, we can't force Jessica to remove them." Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Safety hazard? Are you blind? Those monstrosities are an accident waiting to happen. They'll blind drivers, attract criminals, and drive down property values. This is unacceptable." Mr. Henderson sighed, already weary of the conversation. "I'm sorry, Karen, but my hands are tied. Unless you can provide concrete evidence of a violation, there's nothing I can do." Fuming, Karen slammed down the phone, already plotting her next move. She was determined to win this war, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Jessica watched the drama unfold from her kitchen window, a wry smile playing on her lips. She knew Karen was furious, and part of her relished the other woman's frustration. "Bring it on, Karen," she muttered, taking a sip of her coffee. "I'm not going anywhere." Over the next few days, Jessica noticed strange things happening around her house. Her trash cans would be mysteriously knocked over, her garden hose cut, and one morning she even found a flyer taped to her front door warning her about the dangers of her new lights. Jessica's heart raced, but she refused to be intimidated. Instead, she began documenting everything, taking photos and videos of the incidents. She knew that if she was going to win this battle, she would need evidence to back her up. As the days turned into weeks, the conflict only escalated. Karen's harassment became more brazen, and Jessica found herself constantly on edge, wondering what the next attack would be. But through it all, the shatterproof lights continued to shine, a defiant symbol of Jessica's refusal to back down. And as the war raged on, she knew that the final showdown was inevitable. The tension in the neighborhood reached a boiling point when Jessica's car was found with a slashed tire one morning. She knew immediately who was responsible, and she wasted no time calling the police. "This is the last straw," Jessica fumed as the officer dutifully took down her report. "Karen has gone too far." The officer, a young man named Officer Martinez, listened patiently as Jessica recounted the endless campaign of harassment she had endured. "I understand your frustration, ma'am. This sounds like it's been an ongoing issue. We'll investigate this incident, but you may want to consider filing a restraining order against your neighbor." Jessica nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm done playing by her rules. It's time to end this, once and for all." As the officer left, Jessica turned her attention to her phone, scrolling through the growing file of evidence she had compiled against Karen. There were photos of the damaged property, recordings of Karen's abusive voicemails, and even a copy of the threatening flyer that had appeared on her doorstep. "Okay, Karen," Jessica muttered, her fingers flying across the screen as she composed an email to the HOA board. "Let's see how you like it when the tables are turned." The next day, Jessica watched with satisfaction as a police cruiser pulled up in front of Karen's house. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see the look of panic on Karen's face as the officers spoke to her. A few hours later, Jessica received a call from Mr. Henderson, the HOA president. "Jessica, I'm so sorry, but we've had to take action against Karen," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "We've received overwhelming evidence of her harassment campaign against you, and we have no choice but to impose strict penalties." Jessica felt a surge of vindication. "What kind of penalties are we talking about?" "Well, for starters, she's been fined for the property damage and will be required to pay for the repairs to your car. Additionally, she's been issued a formal warning, and if she continues this behavior, we'll have no choice but to initiate disciplinary proceedings that could lead to her expulsion from the HOA." Jessica couldn't help but smile. "That's wonderful news, Mr. Henderson. I'm glad to see that the HOA is finally taking this seriously." "Yes, well, we should have acted sooner," Mr. Henderson admitted. "I'm ashamed that it took this level of escalation for us to address the situation properly. I hope you can forgive us." "Of course," Jessica replied, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. "I'm just glad that justice is finally being served." As she hung up the phone, Jessica couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had finally found a way to beat Karen at her own game, and she knew that the war was far from over. The news of Karen's penalties quickly spread through the neighborhood, and Jessica found herself the subject of both admiration and sympathy from her fellow residents. "It's about time someone put that woman in her place," one neighbor, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Watkins, remarked. "She's been terrorizing this community for far too long." Another neighbor, a young mother named Samantha, nodded in agreement. "I'm just glad you had the courage to stand up to her. I know how intimidating she can be." Jessica smiled gratefully, appreciating the support. "It hasn't been easy, I'll admit, but I refuse to let her bully me into submission." As the days passed, Jessica noticed a shift in the neighborhood's dynamics. Neighbors who had previously avoided her or turned a blind eye to Karen's antics now greeted her warmly, even offering to help with yard work or other tasks. I think they're finally realizing that Karen's not the victim here, Jessica mused as she sipped her morning coffee on the porch. But just when Jessica thought she had finally found some peace, Karen struck again. This time, it was a vicious smear campaign, with flyers and social media posts accusing Jessica of being a disruptive neighbor and a menace to the community. Jessica's heart sank as she read the false allegations, her hands shaking with fury. "That's it," she muttered. "I've had enough." Determined to put an end to Karen's reign of terror, Jessica reached out to her lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Samantha Greenfield. "This has gone far enough," Jessica said, her voice quivering with emotion. "I need to take legal action against Karen before she destroys my life." Samantha listened intently as Jessica recounted the entire saga, her brow furrowing with concern. "This is a clear-cut case of harassment and defamation," Samantha said, her eyes narrowing. "We have more than enough evidence to file a restraining order and pursue legal action." Jessica felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you, Samantha. I can't tell you how much this means to me." "Don't worry, Jessica," Samantha replied, a steely glint in her eye. "We're going to put an end to this once and for all." As the wheels of justice began to turn, Jessica knew that the final showdown with Karen was inevitable. But this time, she was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The courtroom was tense as Jessica and Karen faced off, their lawyers arguing passionately on their respective sides. Jessica had spent weeks meticulously preparing her case, gathering evidence and testimony to support her claims of harassment and defamation. As Samantha Greenfield delivered her opening statement, her voice firm and unwavering, Jessica felt a surge of confidence. She knew that the truth was on her side, and she was determined to see this through to the end. "The evidence will show," Samantha declared, "that Ms. Karen Wilkins has engaged in a persistent campaign of harassment and intimidation against my client, Jessica Robertson. From vandalizing her property to launching a malicious smear campaign, Ms. Wilkins has gone to extreme lengths to victimize and terrorize her neighbor." Karen's lawyer, a slick-looking man named Mr. Fitzgerald, scoffed in response. "This is nothing more than a frivolous attempt to vilify my client. The so-called evidence is nothing more than a series of unsubstantiated claims and circumstantial allegations." Jessica watched as Samantha methodically presented each piece of evidence, exposing the damning trail of harassment that Karen had left in her wake. Witness after witness took the stand, corroborating Jessica's account and painting a clear picture of Karen's obsessive and abusive behavior. Throughout the proceedings, Karen sat uncomfortably in her seat, her face flushed with a mixture of anger and fear. She knew that the walls were closing in, and her attempts to control the narrative were rapidly unraveling. As the final witness stepped down, Samantha turned to the judge, her eyes blazing with determination. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Ms. Wilkins has engaged in a sustained campaign of harassment and defamation against my client, causing her significant emotional distress and financial harm. We are requesting a restraining order, as well as damages to cover the cost of the property repairs and legal fees." Mr. Fitzgerald rose to his feet, his face twisted in a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Your Honor, this is all a gross exaggeration. My client has simply been advocating for the well-being of the community, as any responsible HOA member would. These claims of harassment are nothing more than an attempt to silence her." The judge listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. After a tense moment of silence, he cleared his throat and delivered his verdict. "Having reviewed the evidence presented, I find that the plaintiff's claims of harassment and defamation are well substantiated. I hereby issue a restraining order against the defendant, Karen Wilkins, prohibiting her from any further contact with the plaintiff or interference with her property. Additionally, the defendant is ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $15,000 to cover the cost of damages and legal fees." As the gavel came down, Jessica felt a wave of relief wash over her. It was finally over. The nightmare was behind her. and she had emerged victorious. In the aftermath of the court ruling, the neighborhood was abuzz with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Many residents had been unaware of the full extent of Karen's campaign against Jessica, and they were shocked to learn of the lengths she had gone to in her quest for control. "I can't believe it," Mrs. Henderson, the wife of the HOA president, said to Jessica over coffee. "I knew Karen could be difficult, but I never imagined she would stoop to such vicious tactics." Jessica nodded, her expression weary but resolute. "I'm just glad it's finally over. I couldn't have done it without the support of the community and my incredible lawyer." As word of the court's decision spread, Karen became the subject of intense scrutiny and judgment from her fellow residents. Many of them had once been cowed by her intimidation tactics, but now they were emboldened to speak out against her behavior. "She's always been a bully, but this is a whole new level of cruelty," one neighbor, a young mother named Samantha, said to Jessica. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad you stood your ground." For Jessica, the relief was palpable, but the lingering effects of the ordeal were still evident. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, wary of any further retaliation from Karen. "I just want to move on and reclaim my peace of mind," Jessica confided to her lawyer, Samantha Greenfield. "But I can't help but wonder if Karen will ever truly leave me alone." Samantha placed a reassuring hand on Jessica's shoulder. "The restraining order is in place, and the court has made it clear that any further harassment will result in severe consequences. You've done everything you can to protect yourself. Now it's time to focus on healing and moving forward." Jessica nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're right. I can't let Karen's actions define me anymore. It's time to reclaim my life." As the days passed, Jessica began to feel a sense of renewed optimism. The shatterproof lights that had once been the source of so much conflict now shone as a symbol of her resilience, a testament to her unwavering determination. And with the support of her newfound allies in the community, Jessica knew that she was no longer alone in her fight against Karen's tyranny. She had won the battle, and she was determined to use her victory to inspire others to stand up to bullies like her. "This is just the beginning," Jessica said, a steely glint in her eye. "I'm not going to let Karen win. Not now. Not ever." As the weeks passed, Jessica began to rebuild her life, slowly but surely reclaiming her sense of peace and security. The restraining order against Karen had given her a much-needed respite, and she found herself reconnecting with her neighbors in meaningful ways. One day, as Jessica was tending to her garden, she heard a familiar voice call out to her. It was Mrs. Henderson, the wife of the HOA president, and she was accompanied by a group of her friends. "Jessica, we've been meaning to come by and apologize," Mrs. Henderson said, her expression contrite. "We should have done more to support you during all of this. We're so sorry we let Karen's intimidation tactics silence us for so long." Jessica felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "There's no need to apologize. I'm just grateful that the truth finally came to light." The group of women nodded in agreement, and one of them, a vibrant older woman named Mrs. Watkins, stepped forward. "We want you to know that we're here for you, Jessica. We're going to make sure that Karen never terrorizes this neighborhood again." Jessica felt a surge of emotion, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you, all of you. It means so much to know that I have your support." In the days that followed, Jessica found herself at the center of a growing community movement. Neighbors who had once been too afraid to speak up against Karen were now rallying together, determined to ensure that justice prevailed. They organized neighborhood watch patrols, keeping a vigilant eye on Karen's movements and reporting any suspicious activity. They also worked to build a stronger sense of community, hosting block parties and potlucks that brought everyone together. Jessica, in turn, became a beacon of inspiration for her fellow residents. She shared her story openly, encouraging others to stand up against bullies and to never let fear hold them back. "We can't let people like Karen win," Jessica would say, her voice filled with conviction. We have to stand up for what— It was a crisp autumn evening when Jessica heard a familiar car pull up in front of her house. Her heart raced as she peered through the curtains, instantly recognizing the vehicle as Karen's. "She can't be serious," Jessica muttered, her hands clenching into fists. After everything that had happened, she had hoped that Karen would finally leave her alone. Steeling herself, Jessica opened the front door and stepped out, ready to confront her longtime nemesis. But to her surprise, Karen didn't rush toward her with the usual vitriol. Instead, the woman stood rooted to the spot, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Jessica," Karen said, her voice trembling, I need to talk to you." Caught off guard, Jessica hesitantly approached Karen, unsure of what to expect. "What is it, Karen?" she asked, her tone cautious. Karen took a deep breath, her eyes downcast. I want to apologize for everything. I was wrong, and I'm so sorry for the way I treated you." Jessica stared at Karen, her mind racing. This was the last thing she had expected. "I can't believe you're saying this," Jessica replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, Karen said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I've been a terrible person, and I've made so many mistakes. But seeing how the community has rallied around you, and how strong and resilient you've been, it's made me realize just how wrong I was." Jessica watched as Karen's lips trembled, tears streaming down her face. "I let my obsession with control and conformity blind me to the humanity in all of this," Karen continued. "I hurt you, and I hurt the people in this neighborhood, all because I couldn't see beyond my own narrow-mindedness." Jessica felt a surge of conflicting emotions. A part of her wanted to lash out, to demand an explanation for all the pain Karen had caused. But another part of her, the part that had emerged stronger and more compassionate through this ordeal, recognized the sincerity in Karen's words. "I'm not going to pretend that this is easy for me," Jessica said, her voice soft but firm. "You've done a lot of damage, and it's going to take time for me to truly forgive you." Karen nodded, her expression one of resignation. "I understand. And I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry, and that I'm going to do everything in my power to make amends and be a better neighbor." As the two women stood there, the tension in the air gradually dissipated, replaced by a sense of cautious understanding. Jessica knew that the road ahead would not be an easy one, but she also recognized the opportunity for healing and growth. "Okay, Karen," Jessica said, offering the other woman a tentative smile. "Let's see where this goes." And as the shatterproof lights continued to shine, illuminating the path forward, Jessica felt a renewed sense of hope, not just for herself, but for the entire community she loved.